The first letter arrived in early April, tucked among the grocery flyers and bank statements in Martin Hale's rural Vermont mailbox. The envelope was the color of raw linen, the ink a mossy green, the postmark smeared beyond recognition. Martin, 67, widowed, and half expecting a coupon from the local hardware store, opened it at the kitchen table while the kettle sighed for his morning tea. Dear great-grandfather Martin, the letter began, in a looping script that reminded him of his late wife Ruth when she was still steady-handed. I write from the year 2123 in the city of New Boston to thank you for the forest you have not yet planted. Without it, we would have perished in the fire seasons of 97 and 99. Martin snorted, an involuntary bark that startled the kettle into a louder hiss. The writer claimed to be Clara Hale, born 2099, granddaughter of a granddaughter he had never met. She apologized for the intrusion, then outlined a list of tree species: white pine, bur oak, red spruce, American chestnut, blight-resistant strain, and urged him to begin planting immediately. The forest, she said, would become a refuge, a seed bank, a source of cool air during rolling blackouts. Every sapling matters, Clara wrote. Please start this spring. Martin folded the letter, slid it back into its envelope, and laid it on the refrigerator beside Ruth's favorite recipe cards. A joke, he decided. Maybe Anna, his only child, had orchestrated it to coax him outside. She worried he spent too much time haunting the house like a stubborn ghost. The second letter arrived a week later. The same linen envelope, the same green ink. This one came from a boy named Ezra Hale, dated 2146. He thanked Martin for planting the pines, but begged him to add more deciduous trees to buffer future storms. Included was a tiny packet of seeds labeled American Persimmon Cold Hardy, along with careful instructions for stratification. Martin drove straight to the post office. Linda, the postmaster, scanned the envelopes, squinting at the blurred postmarks. Never seen these, she admitted. No return address, no barcode. Where'd they come from? That's what I'm asking you, she shrugged. Sometimes mail routes get crossed. Could be overseas. Overseas? Martin eyed the stamp's depictions of birds he didn't recognize, their plumage shot with improbable colors. Can you track them? Not without a proper code? Sorry, Marty. At home, he placed Ezra's packet of seeds on the windowsill. Persimmon wasn't native to his land, but Ruth had loved experiments. She used to plant oddities just to see if they'd make it through winter. He could almost hear her. Why not try, Marty? What's the worst that can happen? More trees? The third letter landed on his porch 2 days later, as though the sender had grown impatient with the postal service. It was from May Hale, 2182, who wrote of sky blanketing smoke and children bathing in ash. She enclosed a photograph, crisp, glossy, impossible to fake with home equipment, of a broad, sun-dappled forest clearing. A weathered wooden sign read, Haven Wood Sanctuary. Martin inspected the sign's grain, the moss at its base, the slight tilt that suggested amateur handiwork. On the frame's lower edge, someone had carved H+M 2023, his initials and Ruth's. The photograph shook in his hands. Only Ruth had known about the secret carving they'd once made in a campground on their honeymoon, hiding their initials inside a heart. No one else, certainly not Anna, knew that story. Still, Martin resisted. He clipped the letters together and buried them in a kitchen drawer beneath the warranty for a tractor he no longer owned. But at night, he dreamed of Ruth kneeling in the vegetable garden, dirt caking her gloves, hair escaping its scarf. Plant something, she said, without moving her lips. Plant where I can walk again. Spring advanced, unseasonably hot, mosquitoes biting before the maples even leafed out. Martin shuffled around the empty house, dusting surfaces that refused to stay clean, waiting for the day's mail like a man awaiting judgment. The fourth letter arrived May 1st, Beltane, Ruth's favorite quasi-holiday. She used to weave garlands of dandelions and force him to wear them while grilling dinner. This envelope, slightly larger, contained a pressed leaf 5 slender leaflets radiating from a central stem, edges serrated like a fine saw. The note identified it as Acer halei, a maple cultivar, developed in 2105 for drought tolerance. Martin looked up the scientific name. That didn't exist, yet the leaf was real, veined, carrying a faint scent of sap. He placed it in a dish of water. By morning, tiny roots budded from the petiole as though it still lived. That did it. Hoax or not, he needed answers. He wrote a blunt reply, "Who are you people?" addressed it to the future, and left it in his mailbox. The next day, his envelope was gone, replaced by a fifth letter. "Dear great-grandfather," Clara wrote again. "We read your note the moment you sealed it. Time isn't linear the way you think, it breathes. Your questions are natural. Here are answers you will believe. She listed private memories, Ruth's last joke in the hospital. If I'd known dying was this boring, I'd have brought a puzzle. The color of the sweater Anna had worn to her first school play, a hideous mustard, Ruth pretended to love. The fact that Martin kept his boyhood dog tags in a mason jar beneath the barn floorboards. He hurried to the barn, pried up the loose board, and found the jar untouched, the metal tags jingling like small bells. Above the jar, a fresh sprout poked through the dirt, pale, fragile, newborn. Martin stared, heart banging. The sprout was a white pine seedling, and he had not planted any. He sat on the barn's dusty threshold until dusk, the letter trembling between his fingers. When the whip poor wheels started up, he whispered aloud, "All right, you win." The next morning, he ordered 200 bare root saplings, oak, pine, spruce, from a state nursery. He dug holes across the back acres, halting only for water and aspirin. At first, the work felt absurd, like building a sandcastle against a tsunami, but when he pressed each sapling into earth, tamping soil the way Ruth had taught him, firm but don't bruise the roots, Marty, something loosened in his chest. Grief stretching into movement, the letters kept pace with his progress. Ezra praised the first row of pines. May suggested underplanting hazelnuts. Clara offered advice on compost teas rich in fungal spores. They wrote of nurse logs and mycorrhizal webs, of carbon sequestration curves that would peak around 2090. Sometimes their details wavered, dates shifting, storm names altering, as though the future kept rewriting itself. One Thursday, Martin found 6 letters at once. The first 5 rattled off technical guidance. The 6th was brief. Today matters. At noon, a man from Northern Timber arrived unannounced, offering cash for Martin's land. "We can clear the parcel and replant fast-growing hybrids," he said, flashing a contract thick as a hymnal. "Good for the planet, good for your wallet." Martin recalled Clara's warning in an earlier letter. "A logging outfit will tempt you." Say no. The forest must remain diverse, unmanaged by profit, he told the man to leave. That evening, another letter arrived. "You chose well. Because of your refusal, the warbler's nesting corridor remains unbroken, and our water stays cold enough for trout. Thank you." Winter returned before Martin finished planting. He wrapped young trunks in burlap, mulched, scattered straw to insulate the roots. Snow fell in yellow moonlight. He worried the saplings would not see spring. In December, he caught pneumonia. The doctor scolded him for overexertion, prescribed rest. Martin rested 2 days, then slogged outside in a parka to brush snow from bent branches. On Christmas morning, he opened the mailbox to find a small wooden ornament, a tree carved from something dark as coffee. Under the varnish shone faint flecks of metal nano-inclusions, the enclosed letter explained, harvested from recycled circuit boards. "Old Tech Reborn," wrote a descendant named Sal, 2205, "just like our forests." He hung the ornament on the living room ficus, the only indoor plant Ruth hadn't slaughtered with overwatering. Under its plastic pot, the floor bore scratches from Ruth's wheelchair. Martin had never refinished them. They anchored her presence. By the second spring, word of Martin's project leaked to the town. A reporter from the county paper interviewed him by the newly installed rainwater barrels. Martin spoke cautiously, omitting the time-traveling letters. "I'm following my wife's dream," he said, "planting a mixed forest for future generations." The article framed him as a quirky retiree with a green thumb. Volunteers trickled in, high schoolers earning service hours, retirees craving fresh air. Martin taught them what he'd learned from the letters: dig wide, not deep. Let roots drink rain. Mulch, but do not suffocate. With help, 20 acres transformed into a patchwork of saplings, wildflower meadows, and hand-dug ponds. Monarchs returned, their stained glass wings flickering over milkweed. A fox denned beneath the oldest oak. Martin began each day walking the newborn forest, tasting its slow-growing silence. The letters evolved. Instead of pleas, they offered stories. A 12-year-old named Juniper described conducting bioluminescent fungi studies under Havenwood's canopy. A firefighter named Ari recounted leading evacuees through the forest's cool corridor, away from a megafire, devouring Boston's outskirts. They wrote with reverence. "Havenwood saved us. Havenwood fed us. Havenwood taught us to breathe." Each story printed on paper that felt lighter than anything in Martin's time. Edges water-resistant, smelling faintly of resin. One summer night, thunder cracked the sky open like porcelain. A storm cell stalled overhead, dumping 7 inches of rain in 4 hours. The river burst its banks, sweeping through town. Martin's farmhouse sat on higher ground, but the seedlings risked drowning. He pulled on waders and slogged into the deluge, carving channels with a shovel to redirect flow. Lightning illuminated rows of saplings, bowing yet upright, their leaves shining silver. In that blue-white flash, he glimpsed Ruth beside him, sleeves rolled, hair slicked to her cheeks, smiling as if to say, "You're doing it, Marty. You're really doing it." After the flood receded, a letter arrived from Clara, dated 2123, revised. "The flood you endured delayed the Cedar Grove by 3 years, but it spared the town's library, giving us access to archival data that proved crucial in 2115. Thank you for your courage. Futures shift because of moments like that one." Martin traced her sentence, "futures shift," until ink smudged his fingertips. He began to understand that time was a woven cloth, threads crossing in every direction, tension adjusted by choices small and large. He could tug here, not there, and descendants would feel the quiver centuries ahead. In September, Northern Timber returned with a thicker contract and a more persuasive man in a tailored suit. Martin's savings were thin. Medical bills from Ruth's last year still clung like burrs. He read the contract, seeing the dollar signs that could clear his debts, fund more saplings, buy better tools. The man promised reforestation, carbon credits, a partnership with big tech. "We'll make your dreams scale," he said. That night, Martin couldn't sleep. He moved from window to window, hearing the nascent forest breathe in the dark. At dawn, he found 2 envelopes in the mailbox, each sealed with wax stamped H. The first was from Sal, 2205. "If you sell, they will clear cut in 2039, replacing diversity with monoculture. Our pollinators will crash, and we will ration fruit to children only." The second came from an unnamed descendant, 2473, a shaky scrawl on brittle paper. "Our records of you vanish after the sale. Havenwood is gone, so are we." Martin burned the contract in his wood stove, flames licking the pages into feathered ash. He coughed smoke and felt lighter. That winter, he established the Hale Havenwood Trust, a legal shield, ensuring the land would remain a conservation sanctuary in perpetuity. A local environmental lawyer, paid partly in maple syrup and partly in Ruth's homemade quilts, helped file the paperwork. Martin signed with trembling fingers, imagining Clara somewhere in the year 2123, cheering. The planting continued. He introduced understory shrubs, medicinal herbs Ruth had adored, echinacea, St. John's wort, bee balm. He inoculated logs with shiitake spawn and built a modest boardwalk through the wetlands. Volunteers multiplied, school children painted signs, a local artist carved benches from storm-fallen trunks. Havenwood, people began to call it, as if the name had always belonged to the land. Martin's body, however, wore down. Arthritic knees, shortness of breath, a heart murmur whispering louder. In early spring of his 4th planting year, he collapsed while mulching a row of persimmons grown from Ezra's seeds. At the hospital, machines beeped in sympathy. Anna flew in, tears bright in her worried eyes. "Dad, you need to slow down," she said, gripping his hand. He wanted to tell her everything, the letters, the descendants, the woven threads, but the words tangled behind fatigue. That night, alone in the dim ward, he received a final letter. The envelope appeared on his bedside tray, though no nurse had entered. It was smaller, vellum thin. "Dear great-grandfather Martin, we are the last Hales writing in the year 2199 as embers fall like snow. Havenwood still stands amid ruin. Its trees sequestered enough carbon to temper the fires. Its ponds served as cisterns when the aquifers failed. Because of the genetic diversity you preserved, we carry seedlings westward, hoping to coax green from scorched earth. We do not ask anything more. You have given beyond measure. Rest. With love, always. Clara, Ezra, May, Sal, Juniper, Ari, and countless others." Below the signatures lay a pressed leaf. A hahale again, but larger, veined with coppery threads of sap. Martin placed it over his heart, feeling its cool reassurance. The next morning, Anna found him asleep, one hand clutching the letter, the other resting on his chest beneath the leaf. He did not wake. Spring slid into summer. Volunteers, following Martin's meticulous notes, planted the final clearing with maples, then held a quiet ceremony at the pond's edge. Anna, wearing her mother's gardening gloves, scattered her father's ashes among the roots of the oldest oak. Wind stirred the branches. A red-winged blackbird whistled its liquid song. Years passed. Saplings thickened into trunks, their crowns interlacing to form vaulted aisles of green. Children chased each other along soft-needled paths. Couples exchanged vows beneath blossoming persimmons. Scientists studied fungal networks glowing faintly at twilight. One humid evening in 2123, a woman named Clara Hale knelt by the oak bearing H plus M 2023. She pressed her palm to the bark, feeling the pulse of centuries. Then she slipped a letter into a linen envelope, inked it with mossy green, and whispered, "Thank you, great-grandfather. Time to begin again."